Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. This is a very, very exciting conference symposium. I think it's very cool to get a bunch of classroom teachers together, particularly those interested in the things that I spend so much of my time talking about that I don't think enough people care about, like evidence-based instruction, explicit instruction, fluency. Like these are things that we do daily at Morningside, and we spend a lot of our time talking to classroom teachers. I taught in this model for years before I became a teacher trainer. And so often when I'm talking about these things, I just feel like it's brand new to people, and it's very cool to be in a group in which people are interested in these types of practices. And just looking at the list of the different talks, I was just very excited because I'm like, these are so much the things that I think we find very interesting. We've been working on for a long time. Um, so what I'm going to do today is just kind of give an overview of our generative instruction model. And really the idea behind this instructional model is looking at the evidence and research base and combining those things into one place to help teachers and schools figure out ways to make sure that all kids are successful in school, and to really like the subtitle of this talk is to kind of build a bridge between skills and inquiry teaching. Too often there's kind of a two camps of the skill builders, the people who are like who we usually get thrown into that camp, the direct instruction people, explicit instruction people, fluency people. That's kind of those are my group of people that I spend the most of my time with. And then that's often run as like counter to ideas like inquiry teaching, project-based learning, things that are generally considered constructivist. And we like to think that there's kind of an in-between, and that these are tools that we can use. And that unfortunately, many of the constructivist practices that we see that are now successful, they could be successful. And kids could be successful in those types of teaching paradigms if we employ these evidence and research-based tools for the majority of our kids who really need them to benefit. So I'm going to kind of talk about this bridge as we go through it, because we're really that's really kind of our goal here in Morningside's laboratory school, is to kind of help bridge this gap and to kind of help bridge some of the research to practice gap. Okay, so Morningside is a nonprofit organization that has a couple of different functions. So the number one function, what most of my day is about, probably 60% of my day, is about our laboratory school. So here in Seattle, Washington, we run this school site. It's a laboratory school in which we research new and best practices. So we look at the literature. When we find things that are successful, then we try to bridge them by doing them in actual messy classrooms with real children and real teachers and kids who forgot their lunch and don't know where their backpack is and didn't eat this morning, and all the things that are usually not part of the research base. And then we're also a demonstration site for people to come see what these evidence and research-based practices can look like. So we constantly have visitors visiting Morningside to kind of spend time in our classrooms, spend time with our classroom teachers to kind of see what this is all about. Um, so the lab school has been around for 46 years, and everything that we use is either evidence or research based. So those are best practices both in curriculum and in teaching and learning. So we kind of are big curriculum nerds. We're constantly changing out curricula based on what we see that may work, may have some evidence for kids, but also on kind of our old tried and true programs that we know get really good results. And then also looking at what are the teaching procedures that are gaining some momentum, that have some data behind them, that aren't not because they're trendy or because they're a fad, but because there's actual good science behind the design of those programs and the outcomes. So the kids who come to the laboratory school are elementary, middle age, or middle school age kids. They enroll for generally 2 to 4 years, and for most kids, the goal is to kind of get caught up and get ahead. Most kids come, anywhere from 1 to 3 to 4 years behind, and their goal is to kind of get caught up, go back to their public or private school. So the population of kids that we serve at the lab school are kids who would be in need of tier two MTSS types interventions, group-based interventions in public schools. We call those kids the forgotten 40%. So we think that there's a lot of attention paid to general ed students, a lot of attention paid to more kids with more intensive intervention needs, our tier three and tier four learners, but really that tier two group we think often just falls through the cracks. So that's kind of been our focus at Morningside, is we're going to serve an entire population of those students with the evidence and research-based tools. And then as we get good data, again, we can share those findings and help design and implement practices that are successful in tier one and in tier three. But tier two is really kind of the heart and soul of the laboratory school. So the kids who show up at Morningside, there's between 80 and 100 kids every year, kind of depending on who comes to our door and what questions we're trying to answer. These are kids with ADHD diagnoses, mild learning disabilities, a lot of executive functioning challenges, and just kind of those kids who are behind and struggling. So they're your C and D students of America, but they are kids who have average to above average IQs. They should be at grade level or above. but they've just fallen through the cracks for a variety of reasons. And their issues are academic problems. They're not social behavioral. So these are not kids with significant problem behaviors. Although, as many of you, I'm sure know, when you've got kids who struggle in school, problem behavior follows along pretty closely. So we get our fair share of kids who are good at getting out of class, good at distracting, all the kind of hits that allow them to avoid engaging in what's really difficult for them. And as I said before, I'm going to talk about these in more detail later, but everything we kind of operate as this third level scientifically driven service organization. So we kind of want to be this bridge. We have a foot in the research world, but more of I guess, a heavier foot in the practice world of we want to take these technologies that we know have good evidence and research base, and we want to put them into practice in a way that teachers can learn how to do them, can come visit us, and then can take them back to their own schools. So these are research-based technologies like direct and explicit instruction, which I'm sure a lot of you know about, precision teaching, which is a specific methodology for building fluency. I'll probably spend the most of my time today because I think that's usually new um, to most classroom teachers. Think Aloud Problem Solving, which is a critical thinking and problem solving routine that I won't get into much today, unfortunately. And then we look at some of the classroom management research, especially what's coming out of the applied behavior analysis world, things like the good behavior game, which if you don't know that, that's a fantastic tool. Tag teaching, we run our daily support card, which is essentially a kind of a scaled up version of a good behavior game that we can use with all tier 2 students. And then we're really big on assessment. So we have a full-time school psych for 85 kids this year, which is not typical because we're really interested in assessment to make sure that what we're doing works. And if it doesn't work, we need to know immediately so we can make changes. And I'm going to talk about that at length because that's really the root of intervention, right? Is finding problems quickly and then doing something about them. And doing something, as Sally said in the keynote, until we get a good outcome. So Morningside's a nonprofit private school. It is tuition based. And so since the very beginning, Morningside's had this learning guarantee where students who come to Morningside are guaranteed 2 or more years growth in their area of greatest deficit. Those are based on standardized testing in reading, writing, math, or their tuitions are funded. And in the summer, kids come for 4 weeks for about 3 hours a day, and they are guaranteed half of a year's growth in their area of greatest need. Again, reading, writing, math, or their tuitions are funded. In 45 years, actually 46, I need to update this slide, giving back less than 1%. And the number is actually lower than that. So we know the kids who are coming in here are going to make the outcomes. And that's important to families who are uprooting their kids and bringing them to a school. We serve kids from all over the greater Seattle area. We got about 5 or 6 kids who take a ferry every day to get here. So it's an investment, time and money. So it's really important that we think to kind of guarantee to parents that their students are going to get the outcomes that they're investing in. I'm going to show you some of our outcome data. I won't go through all these in depth. I'll kind of talk through this first slide, then I'll kind of page through some more. So this is standardized test data for kids who are new students at Morningside. So first year students at Morningside coming in the past 4 years. So between 2021, 2025, these are kids who came into Morningside within 2 years of grade level in their word attack, which is a Woodcock-Johnson assessment of being able to read nonsense words. So it's a really nice decoding assessment. So those kids, right, this average group of children were coming in prior to enrolling at Morningside. You can kind of see this gray line shows their previous growth. They've been learning essentially 7 months in 10 months in school. So a school year from the standardized test world is 10 months. So, in an ideal scenario, or maybe not ideal, but in an acceptable scenario, a student would be in 1 year in school would make 1 year growth. 2 years in school, 2 years growth, right? We'd want to have this line that basically gets us this year per year. The kids who come to Morningside are mostly like these children, 7 months per year or 10 months. So that starts to build up and they get further and further behind. And we know that just getting them back to like 1 year per year doesn't do the trick because they're already behind their peers. So we have to actually increase the rate of learning beyond that of their typical thriving gen ed peers. So what we're doing in gen ed isn't successful for them. We need to do something different and we need to do it quickly because those kids deserve to be caught up and be at grade level. You can see the kind of projected growth for these learners without this type of intervention. And then for this group of kids in this 4 year period, on average, they made 2.6 years growth in 1 school year on their decoding skills. These are the kids who are even further behind. So these are the kids coming in 2 or more years behind grade level. So for this group of children before this intervention, they were only really learning 5 months worth of what's being taught in a given year versus the 10 months. And after a year, we have 2.8 years growth on average. So that's really powerful, right? For a lot of kids, that's not enough. Even 1 year at 2.8 years growth, they're still behind their peers, which is why for most kids who come here, it's 2 to 4 years for them to be able to get caught up and get ahead. I'll page through a few more of them. I'm not going to talk about each one of these, but you'll see kind of similar learning trajectory changes for each assessment. These are reading comprehension students, more reading comp for students who are more than 2 years behind. This is math fluency for kids who are within 2 years. Here's math fluency for those who are 2 or more years behind. And you can kind of see the same picture. Writing fluency. And fluency is a big part of what we do here. So those lab school outcomes are really important for us to kind of verify that either the curriculum that we're using or the classroom procedures are successful. And once we kind of verify that, then the second function of Morningside takes over. And that's part of what I'm doing today, but really is to kind of transfer these learning technologies. And I don't mean technology from like a tech, like electronics and handheld device standpoint. I mean the technology of teaching. So teaching tools and procedures that can be replicated over and over again. We want to transfer those technologies to classroom teachers. We want to disseminate these practices so that people can actually use them in their classrooms. So we do that in a number of ways. So every summer in July, we run a 2 to 3 week summer institute. We usually have 40 or so people come from around the world. These are teachers, school psychologists, really educators of all inclinations come to learn about this model. They spend afternoons learning new procedures, learning new curricula, and then mornings doing a classroom practica where they're in our laboratory classrooms, actually trying these procedures out with coaching from our classroom teachers and our coaches. Um, we run a very tiny little publishing arm here where when we're looking for a curricula that doesn't exist on the market, so we're looking for the evidence base and there's nothing that kind of fills the needs we're looking for, we end up designing our own. And when we get good data behind it, then we'll start selling those programs. So we have about 50 instructional and fluency building programs and a couple of books describing our general instruction model and describing precision teaching and how it fits into an RTI system. We're actually working on a new version of this book to talk more specifically about MTSS variations. Another cool thing that a lot of you all might be interested in is we run another nonprofit organization called the Wing Institute, winginstitute.org, that's been around for several years, and we took over it probably 5 or 6 years ago. And the goal is purely about dissemination. It is to get evidence and research-based practices into the hands of educational decision makers. And one of our classroom teachers right now, she spends part of her day running the Wing Institute, and she's working on developing a whole another way of accessing the site specifically for classroom teachers. We find that the Wing Institute's an incredible tool, but it is very much geared towards researchers and kind of administrators. And so we're really working on getting this into the hands of classroom teachers who are looking for tools to improve like the day-to-day experience of their children. So definitely check out the Wing Institute. And then we run our Teachers Academy where we partner with public and private schools all over the world, probably 150 or so in the last 30 years, across the US, Canada, and some in Europe to kind of bring these procedures more specifically to classrooms. So a lot of classroom teacher training and a lot of follow-up coaching. So we're big coaching people here at Morningside. And I'll show you some of those outcomes because I think that's important to show that we get these really powerful outcomes, not just at this small laboratory school where we can control a lot of things, but also in big public and private settings where you all work, where it's much messier. And there's a lot of variables that are kind of in play. These are some cool data from one of our partner schools in Pennsylvania. This was a couple of years ago. We worked with some ninth and 10th grade students who were pretty significantly behind in their reading and math skills. So this is a math fact fluency assessment. This was a 4.5 month intervention. And kids in this school, the kids we worked with at least, historically had only made about 5 months growth per year. And by the time they get to ninth and 10th grade, they're pretty significantly behind. And with 4.5 months of precision teaching as the intervention we did to build math facts, the kids in the Algebra 1 class made about 58 months of growth in 4.5 months. So really powerful growth in a short period of time. And I'll show you what that technology looks like in a little bit. And similar outcomes for calculation, so looking at multi-digit computation and some more advanced computation skills. And then we also worked with reading classes there. So this was a ninth grade English class. Again, kids coming in at about 3 to 4 months growth historically per year. And in 4.5 months in their decoding skills, got about 40 months growth. So that's really significant for a kid in ninth grade who's really still struggling to read to make that kind of growth. I mean, not only is it powerful to see their growth in this form, right, but also just the amount of new experiences it allows them to access is just very powerful. This is a school in Nashville we work with that is kind of in they've embedded this generative instruction model across all three tiers of instruction. And this is their first year. They just started this past school year. This is a new charter school. And what's really cool is the amount of kids in their kindergarten reading who came in testing into tier one, tier two, and tier three. You can see in the fall. And by spring, how drastically different those learners look. And most of these kids are kids who are typically developing, should be tier one learners, but just came into kindergarten with very, very little skills. And through 1 year of adding this combination of direct instruction and precision teaching, you can see they got almost 62% of their kids to tier one. So very, very cool outcomes there. And this is a cool project that I've been working on for 4 or 5 years, in Iceland. I've got some videos from there. So large public schools embedded this model kind of as their default instructional model. And so this is a group of kids this is all in Icelandic. So unless you can write Icelandic, it's not going to make a whole lot of sense. But what this is looking at is their oral reading fluency measures. This is for a cohort of students. This would be their fourth grade data, kind of on the right, and this is their first grade data. So from the outset, they were able to get these students at and above the average performance nationally. So this dash line is the average performance nationally across three benchmarks. So you can see in first grade, they were kind of close to the average performance and getting ahead. By second grade, they're pretty significantly ahead, and they've maintained that ahead of time. So by embedding these practices in their tier one, tier two, and tier three, they're able to make some really significant gains with all their learners right from the outset. Oftentimes, things like direct instruction, precision teaching get relegated, I think, to tier three intervention, maybe tier two. So I really like sharing these data where if you embed this as part of your tier one preventative strategies, you can get huge growth and really, really help a lot of kids from the outset. Because if we can catch them in first and fourth grade, it makes their lives and everyone else's lives significantly easier. So really that's I think this extends beyond Morningside model of germ instruction, but the idea of evidence and research practices, I think it's really a dosage conversation. So it's how much of these things do you need in place to be successful? So in tier one settings, we talk about a lot of these tools as preventative measures, right? We put them in small doses. We talk about this a lot as like a daily vitamin. You do enough fluency and direct instruction on key skills, the kids are going to be successful. It sets them up to do some other experiences that may not have great evidence and research base behind them. But where kids they may find them successful if we don't have good data behind it. Teachers may find more interesting things like project-based learning. But kids need to they need to have a really robust skill set, I think, to enter into those kinds of teaching paradigms. And by having the right dosage in a tier one, we set kids up to be successful. As kids show the need for more intensive intervention, like my learners, tier two interventions, then it's just a heavier dose is the way we talk about it. So more repetitions of whatever they're working on. And so we always talk about that as our antibiotic, right? The goal is to fix a small problem and get kids fixed up as quickly as possible so they can get back to a tier one setting where they just need to rely on kind of that daily preventative. And then some learners need even more, right? So that's more intensive intervention. So precision teaching in particular lines up really well with this. As you'll see, precision teaching is really about doing really meaningful, structured, timed practice daily. So we can allocate different skills to different tiers by just prescribing, is the way we talk about it, more and more repetitions. And using timed repetitions is a big deal because a lot of our students need more practice on the skills that their tier one kids don't need as much practice on. So, but if we don't have more time in the day, right? We keep saying, well, we need to add more practice, more practice, more practice, but where do the minutes come from? So we need to kind of take all that actual practice and kind of condense it. And so using time practice procedures like in precision teaching allows kids to get this mass practice effect where they're able to make these really big gains without needing a ton more time because there just isn't more time to create, as any classroom teacher ever knows. Okay, so we kind of we like this big net of looking at what are all the various evidence and research-based practice and curricula, and then we kind of have distilled them into these kind of 6 core pillars of this generative instruction model that we work with schools to try to get into place. Because when these 6 are in place, things are working really well. So these bottom 4 here I think are becoming more and more the way people talk in school, which I appreciate. So teaching to accuracy, practicing to fluency. We talk about generalization as simple generative responding. I won't get into the why about that now. And then adaptation, we talk about as complex generative responding. So these are often the practices that people are getting turned on to more and more. we think that without these first two pieces, though, all those classroom practices, you're still fighting an uphill battle. And I'll talk briefly about these first two because I do want to spend most of my time showing you about precision teaching because as classroom teachers, that's something you have more control over that than these first two. So the first thing I want to talk about is this component composite analysis. So a major saying at Morningside is that the problem that presents is not necessarily the problem that needs to be solved. So when kids struggle with a given skill, algebra, reading comprehension, often it's not that particular skill that's difficult. It's the fact that they're disfluent at the underlying skill sets necessary to be successful there. So if I'm struggling with my math facts, if I'm struggling with basic computational algorithms, and you're trying to teach me algebra, more algebra tutoring is just going to take more time and be more frustrating. Like without a shoring up kind of foundation of skills, it's really difficult to add more and more skills on top of that. So what we think is really important is that we pick the curricula that we're going to teach based on the component skills, right? These kind of underlying skills that we deconstruct from the classroom and real world repertoires or real world performances. So like we'll look at what's happening in an eighth grade inquiry class, for example, and then say, yeah, but what are the skills you need in order to even do that in the first place? And then that's where we need to provide instruction, not inquiry. Those kind of higher level performances should take care of themselves without as much teacher work if we do the underlying work first. So the reason that a lot of kids struggle in schools is that these components, the underlying component skills, some of them may be absent altogether, right? So the kids do not know how to do an underlying skill. Like they don't know, maybe they don't know how to add and subtract fractions, and you're trying to teach algebra. I know teachers have had that experience. Some of these performances are error prone. So yeah, kids can do them and they tell me that when they come to Morningside. They're like, I already know how to do this. And I'm like, well, you've seen the movie before. I know you know about this, but I don't know that you can do it every single time correct. Right. So they need instruction to be accurate. And the big missing variable in schools by far is that there's a lot of kids who can do these components accurately, but they do them at frequencies or at speeds that are too slow to actually be useful. So if I have a set of 20 computation problems and you can do it in 2 minutes and it takes me 20 minutes, and they're both 100% accurate. Those are very different performances, right? We would both get an A plus on an assessment that measured accuracy, but those are very different in how useful they are. For you, you can use those skills left and right? Algebra is going to be a much easier experience for you because you're just adding a new skill on top of these things that you already know how to do really well. But for me, I'm trying to add a new skill and it takes me a long time to get through all these underlying components. This is where we see a lot of kids, especially I see it at the late middle school and high school level, start to really crash out in math instruction because they've learned how to do some of these underlying skills accurately, but not fluency. So we're going to focus our instruction not on whatever the grade level standard is. We're going to focus it specifically on what components need to be mastered. The second thing that we do before children ever step foot in the door or step foot in the classroom setting is we group students based on similar strengths and weaknesses. And of all the six pillars, when people ask, like, if I were in charge of a public school setting, what's the first thing I would do? It would be homogeneous achievement grouping. So placing students in classroom with similar students. It's all about efficiency. So if I have a 60-minute instructional block and I've got to differentiate my time across 3 reading groups, for example, as a kindergarten teacher, which if you've taught kindergarten, there's way more than 3 groups. But let's assume it's a nice break where I've got 3 groups of kids. There's no way I'm really going to spend 20 minutes with each group of kids. I'm going to spend more time with the struggling learners. I'm going to spend some time with the median learners. And then those kids in the high group get less time. And really nobody gets enough time. So by regrouping kids based on similar strengths and weaknesses, that full 60 minutes, I can teach directly to the middle. So I can get way more use out of my time. And so we have a lot of schools we work with whose teachers advocate for homogeneous achievement grouping, ideally school-wide, but at the very least within their grade level groups, because it makes such a difference when you are teaching and you're not having to differentiate to multiple groups of children. You just can't do it. It's like it's superhero work to watch kindergarten teachers trying to differentiate, in my opinion. I've get to go to a lot of classrooms and I'm just blown away by how organized and how fast paced they are. And even so, it's just impossible to get to everybody. So there's a lot of research on homogeneous achievement grouping. And when it's done correctly, where students can move groups based on as they make progress, students tend to make about 1 year growth in 1 year, regardless of whether or not you change the curriculum or instruction. Right. So just grouping kids similarly, they tend to get about 1 year per year. So you add on top of that evidence and research-based instructional practices and curriculum, that's how we can get 2 or 3 years growth because we already know we're going to get 1 year just based on kids with similar strengths and weaknesses. All right. I'm going to show a couple of videos really quickly. So that's kind of before we get into the classroom. In the classroom, we're going to doing two things heavily: teaching to accuracy with direct and explicit instruction. That can mean formal direct instruction programs like the Engelman scripted programs. It can also mean other programs built on explicit instruction principles, like a lot of Anita Archer's programs. And then once we get to accuracy, that's half the battle, then it's on to building fluency with precision teaching. So I'll show you one quick video of, oh, actually, let me show you my little diagram. So this is generally our, we call it the game board of instruction. So any skill that I'm going to teach a student, the first thing, if they don't know how to do it, I start in this kind of demonstrate guide test format. You may know as I do, we do, you do, model lead test. There's lots of variations of this type of approach, but I'm going to demonstrate by showing you how to do a skill. Then I'm going to slowly release my teacher prompts, asking you to do more and more. And then I'm going to test you or release you to see if you can do it on your own. And once you can do it on your own and you're accurate, then we're going to move into precision teaching. Like now you're halfway there. Now we're going to start to speed up your performance. So we're going to get it getting a little quicker and a little quicker and a little quicker until you can perform it at a speed that's actually useful for you. So here's a video of one of our classroom teachers doing an instructional procedure called Boardwork. The goal here is to take kids who have learned, this is a corrective reading group. They're going to take these words they've learned how to read. They're kind of near the end of the road in terms of instruction. And Daniel, our teacher, is going to start speeding it up. And then he's going to shift this from instruction into fluency.
Okay, what's this word? You ready?
Unusually!
I heard Sai and Noah and Israel very clearly. Give yourselves an academic point. What is this word? You ready?
Unusually!
Unusually. Good job. What about this one down here? You ready?
Repeated!
Repeated. Nice job. Ben, give yourself 2 learning skills points. I saw your eyes on the board. Good job. What about this word? You ready?
Marker!
Okay, I heard something different. I heard something that looks more like Can you guys see this word right here? Okay, what is this word? You ready?
Matter!
Yeah, natural. This word right here, the ending is different. What is this word? You ready?
Mature!
Mature. Nice job. Let's go back up. This word. You ready?
Matter!
What is this word? You ready?
Shift!
Shift. Nice job. Okay, now I'm going to add another sound. Listen carefully. What sound did I add? I don't want you to say the whole word that's up here. I want you to say the sound that I added. What is this sound? You ready? Good. So our word that we had up here before, plus that new sound. Say the whole thing. What is it? Get ready?
Shiver!
Shiver. Nice. Okay, now let's add the ending that was remaining. What's this word? Whole thing. Get ready?
Shivering!
Shivering. Nice job. What about this word down here? You ready?
Blade!
Good. Let's go back up. This one. You ready?
Shivering!
Good. This one. You ready?
Discover!
Okay. You ready?
Younger! Girl! Delighted! Shelter! Breaking!
You ready?
Gather!
You ready?
Jog! Calls! Feasting! Gather! Bear! Calls! Hollowing!
Nice, everybody. Please begin.
Feasting, hollowing, strangers, cold, particularly jog, gathering, bear, gathering, jog, particularly cold, strangers, hollowing, feasting.
Nice, 10 seconds. Good job, Harrison. I heard one small little error. What is this word?
Gathering.
Remarkable, report, extreme, blaze, barrel, exam, extreme, located, concluded, delight, already discovered, jerk, barrel.
Okay. Go ahead. All right. So I'm almost out of time here. So I just want to show you a couple things about precision teaching, and then I'm going to open up time for questions. So Precision teaching is a tool for building fluency. So we talk about fluency as a idealistic concept, not a quantity. It's an outcome. We know that fluent performance are flexible, flowing, automatic. There is a time and a speed component to it. But oftentimes the conversation about fluency gets lost in the numbers of words per minute, math facts per minute, et cetera, and it loses that fluidity, right? And you hear criticisms of the fluency of the, you're making my kid just read fast, and that can be fair without this full procedure. So precision teaching, it's a combination of we're going to slowly increase the speed at which you do things, but you're going to measure it, you're going to graph it, and we're going to make immediate decisions. I'll show two quick 1 minute videos and then I'll break there for questions that show you kind of what this can look like in a classroom. This is one of our tier one math settings in Iceland. There's about 45 kids in a large middle school classroom doing a variety of math skills. It could be simple math facts all the way up through balancing equations. And you can kind of just see, I'll talk through as it goes. Um, you'll see a lot of kids just running their own timers, getting their own copies of materials, working through various, what we call pinpoints or what are just various skills. You're going to hear timers going off when people hear to say things like timers give children anxiety. That's true if timing is always bad. In this case, because kids are working on setting daily goals and getting systematically better day to day, time is usually a positive thing, right? They can set small goals, they make progress. This student's going up to write on the board whether he got his goal and the teacher to check him out, or if he needs help because he's stuck on a given slice. So precision teaching allows us to build fluency by getting those extra time repetitions, while also allowing teachers, but also more importantly, students to make decisions about their own learning quickly. Again, we don't wait for our like monthly or biweekly CBAs or CPMs to find out that a kid's struggling, because students chart their daily practice and are able to see day to day whether or not they're making. I'll jump ahead. I'll show you one more video from our settings. This is one of our math classes. You'll see something kind of similar. These are a bunch of students with ADHD diagnoses who have struggled with their organization, struggled with time performance, and you can see that they're running their own timings. They're moving quickly. This blue chart here is where they record their timings and they need to make decisions daily about do they need to go quicker, do they need to go slower. And all this kind of informs the teacher practice. All right, I'm going to stop there. I'll stop sharing for now to get questions. If you, I put way more of my slides on purpose. If you want, I've got a bunch of videos in my slides too that I knew I wasn't going to get to. If you have the PDFs of my slides, but if you want any of the videos, please just email me at andrew@morningsideacademy.org, and I'm happy to send you the full slide deck, including the videos. So I've got some cool videos of as we bridge into constructivist learning, what it looks like using a technology called Think Aloud Problem Solving. So happy to share those things. Yeah, what questions do y'all have? I only got about 8 minutes.
Do we just unmute and ask a question, or do we type it in?
That works for me.
Okay.
That's great.
Hi, I'm Kelly from Minnesota, and
Hi,
I'm
Kelly.
just wondering, this sounds amazing. I'm just wondering how you know like what to record or what to have them test on, or based on their grade levels, or where do you find that information?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So at the lab school, kids come in and they spend their first 7 days learning about the school, building community, because we have kids from all over the city. But most of that time is assessment, which is always fun to tell a bunch of kids who don't like school, hey, come to this brand new school and we'll spend 7 days doing a lot of testing. You're going to love it. In that time, we do some standardized testing, but purely so I can kind of show parents and teachers growth. Really, the core of the testing is curriculum-based placement testing. So we'll kind of use standardized testing to get a general window of where a student might perform relative to their peers. And then we use the curriculum-based placement tests that are published by curriculum designers. So like if you're using the formal direct instruction, like Engelman style programs, those always have really fantastic placement tests, which is really nice. Other DI programs or programs built on direct and explicit instruction principles, some of the tests are okay, some are not. Some of the programs we use that are not DI programs, like we teach primary mathematics, which is very much a constructivist math program that we're trying to really wrangle into a good explicit instruction program. We built our own assessment for that. So those curriculum-based placement tests really tell us kind of the fine tune of what skills students are strong at, which ones they're weak at, and which ones they don't like have at all. And then that's what we use to really form our classes. That's trickier to do in a school setting, right? You're given a group of children. You generally don't have control over who you're getting in any given classroom setting. Um, so in those settings, what we do is work with classroom teachers on what are kind of those core underlying component skills that we know are going to have an effect. So often it's the things that are overlooked that are kind of just moved past because a kid hits a certain age or grade. So like, for example, I showed some of the data from the one school with math facts in high school. Our kids doing pre-algebra here do math facts practice. Like there's a lot of really good data on fluency of math facts having really profound outcomes. So that's one thing that we go into most school settings, assume that students are not going to be fluent in their math facts. And then we give teachers a placement test, they run the placement test, and that usually confirms that, yeah, they're missing their math facts. So then we work with teachers on, well, how do you carve out some time in your day? Or how can we get the school to carve out more time to use like a win block or an intervention block to do more fluency work for those skills that need specific instruction. So it's kind of more of a, when we work with schools, we can't do our big range of assessment. But we try to do as much of it as possible. And we try to get assessment tools in the hands of teachers that will actually tell them what to do, not just some set test that's going to tell you your kids are behind. Like we're really big on this diagnostic and prescriptive model. Like we want assessments that tell me where are the deficits for a given learner, but then also what do you do? Like what are you going to do about those deficits? Does that answer that question? Okay, fantastic.
We're at the 5 minute mark.
Okay.
You may have, hi Andrew, you may have
Hi.
touched on this earlier, but I wasn't sure if I heard it right. So when a student comes to Morningside and it's been a year or 2 years and they've made up the gap that they had, do they continue at Morningside or did they tend to exit and go
Ooh.
back to their
That's a
previous
great
school?
question. Thanks for asking that because I didn't talk about it. It depends. So we kind of get two ranges of when kids tend to enter Morningside. We get kids who come in generally around second, third grade, which are the kids who are kind of moving early. You know, they've identified that the parents have identified that their children are behind and they come in second or third grade. Those are my favorite kids. Like I want to get them in while the problems are still more manageable. Those learners tend to generally go back to the public or private school usually after like fifth or sixth grade, really whenever they're ready. So we work with the families to figure out when are they ready to go, when do we think they're going to be successful, when have we gotten them to grade level, and when do they have the executive functioning skills to be successful back in public or private. And then we get this other band of children. Our median age grade here is about between fifth and sixth grade, depending on the year, because that tends to be when I think most families really realize that students are behind. You know, some of those underlying component skills they're missing are starting to really show up when you get into late elementary, middle school curriculum, when you have to inference more, you have to write more, you're getting into more complex mathematics. Those students, it's often same thing, 2 or 3 years, they go back. We always have we have usually about 20 to 30% of our kids here who have caught up in reading and writing. And then many of them will go home, but a lot of those students stay. And we then have our middle school program is designed for kids who are at or above grade level. And it is about getting them ready for high school and college. So that's a really cool place because then we get to play around with other evidence and research-based practices on how do you teach students how to be successful adult learners. So there, it's like they study content courses, they study a civics course, they have a science course, American history. It's really less about content. It's more about the tools in which you need to be successful going forward. So they get lectures or they get lessons on how to take notes from a lecture. They master a skill set called fluent thinking skills, which teaches them how to read a textbook critically and ask study questions. They get instruction on how to homework. So homeworking is a class in which they learn how to organize their space, their time, how to schedule themselves. They get lessons in public speaking. They do a debate class. They do a presentations course. So it's things move from catching up those core reading, writing, math skills into how are you going to now organize those skills when you get into more complex classes. So those classes we kind of organize around this tool belt metaphor of when you enter a high school course or college course, you should be able to identify, is this a lecture course? Okay, great. I've got 2 or 3 tools for that course. Is this a textbook-based class? Well, I've got tools for those. Is this an inquiry class? Well, I know how to do inquiry. Is this a project-based learning class? I know how to do that. So we really want to teach kids how to use those reading, writing, and math skills to be successful in those arrangements because those can be fun, right? Those can be fun for kids to be in a inquiry class. The problem is it's only ever fun for a handful of kids because so many kids are just kind of getting dragged along. So the goal is to get kids ready for what school is going to be like going forward.
We might have time for one more question and then everybody's gotta choose your
Okay.
next location.
I've got a quick question, Andrew. Have you all tried the Facts on Fire, like Brian Ponce's Facts on Fire kind of scheme?
No, we haven't. I've seen that, and it's something I need to spend a little more time looking at. We have our in-house math facts program that we was written and designed in the late 80s when there was really a lack of fluency material. So it's just Morningside math facts that we sell, and we use that, and we get such good outcomes with that that it's probably one area that we're not as. I'm always interested in what other people are doing, especially now that um, there's more going on that I hear people talking about with math fluency. For a while, fluency was felt relegated to oral reading fluency only, and now that I'm hearing more people talk about it, I'm keyed in on what's happening in math. So I have seen that. I need to check it out, but no, I haven't really spent time with it yet.
Can I squeeze in one more question?
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I hadn't heard of like precision teaching 24 hours ago, never heard of it. I
Yeah.
went into a deep dive last night. I actually listened to a podcast with you this morning and then I got on here and I'm like, wait, his name looks so familiar. So it's just so crazy. If I wanted to do a crash course in precision teaching and then like the chart and all of like, where would I start to even learn how to use the chart and all of those
Hmm.
things?
Um, our summer institute's your best deep dive. You're going to get into it.
Okay.
If you really want to like learn, if you want to come out actually doing it, that's what I always recommend to people. So you can learn about it in a lot of different places. You can learn about what the chart is, about what people do. But if you really, really want to get like proficient at the skill and how to actually run it, and I think more importantly, how to run it for groups of children, then that's kind of your best place to reach out to. So reach out to me if you're interested in the Summer Institute, but also we do some additional training stuff from time to time. So just reach out to me and then I'll get you on my list so I can keep you in the loop on anything new that pops up.
Okay.
Often, a lot of precision teachers are often working one-on-one with children, which is cool and you can learn the procedures. But if you're working in classrooms, it's a whole other
Right.
story for how to run this with groups. So that Summer Institute's really kind of your best crash course.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so
Great,
much.
great questions. Well, thank you, Andrew, so much for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you all so much
Every-
for coming.